Hi there, travel lovers. Is your trusted cruise and Tauck tour expert, Shawn Power here. Today I wanted to do a video on one of the travel suppliers who I do a lot of business with, and that company is called Tauck, T-A-U-C-K, for those of you who may not be familiar. Now, I just want to really talk about why Tauck is a really great company to travel with. And I have a lot of my clients who travel with Tauck. About 40% of my business now, my clients do travel with Tauck. So millions and millions of dollars worth of business a year. So I get a lot of feedback from my clients on that company. I personally travel a lot with them myself. And I get a lot of people asking about them because they're not a company that advertises on TV. You're never going to see them do an ad. They're not, in the newspapers everywhere and all that kind of stuff. So the point is, it's just that they're not as well known. And the reason is because they have a lot of referrals, a lot of repeat business. So they just don't need to do all that advertising. So the reason I wanted to talk about them today is because just up until a few days ago, I had spent the last 3 days in Connecticut at Tauck's headquarters. I'm personally on their travel agent advisory board. And this is not something I get paid to do. They're not endorsing me to do this video, nothing like that at all. I own my own travel agency, I own my own business. I can book my clients on whoever I want. But the reason why I am on Tauck's advisory board is because, I do a lot of business with them. And, and they want my feedback as well as probably another good dozen or so of us who they want to get ideas and how they can grow, how they can better serve their clients. And they come to people like myself who do a lot of business with them to get some advice. So like I said, I spent a couple of days, a few days actually in Connecticut, where their head office is. And again, I was just reminded of, some of the reasons, no doubt, why my clients like to go with them again and again. And on average for their trips, it's somewhere around like 70% of people are return Tauck clients. So it's not just my clients. I mean, whoever books Tauck or whoever books direct with Tauck, they just go again and again and again. So a couple of things I'd like to talk about is that basically, with Tauck, they're, like I said, I've personally done a lot of trips with them myself. So I've been on 11 trips with them. I've been on a river cruise. I'm going on another one soon with them. I've been on, I think, maybe 6 or 7 land tours with them. I've been on a few what they call small ship ocean cruises. And, the reason why I go with them again and again and why my clients really do, for one, they've just got so much experience. So Tauck, if you don't know much about them, they started in like 1925. So this is their 100th anniversary this year. Which means they just have so much experience when it comes to dealing with different situations and knowing how to show their clients the world really well. Now, for starters, with that 100-year-old history, if things go wrong, they're one of the best. They're probably the best company that I actually know of when it comes to dealing with things that go wrong. COVID's a great example. During COVID. When my Tauck clients, when their trips were being canceled, they were getting refunds within like 1 to 2 weeks. With the other companies, even the biggest companies out there, like the biggest cruise lines, multi-billion-dollar companies who are part of public companies, some of them were taking 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months. One company took 12 months to get refunds back to my clients. Again, Tauck, 1 to 2 weeks. So they handle COVID better than anyone. They've been through 9/11. They've been through multiple wars. They've really been through it all in 100 years. So right away, you can trust them if things go wrong. And as we know, in this day and age, things do sometimes. So you want to make sure that you're with a company that you can trust. And a reason why they can do that is because Tauck is very smart how they run their operation. When they put you on a river cruise, they actually don't own the river cruise ships. Now they're going to say Tauck on them. You're not going to know any difference, but they actually don't own them. Same with their small ship cruises. They don't own a cruise line or they don't own cruise ships. They'll just charter space on companies like Ponant or maybe Windstar or Silversea. Same with the river cruises. Like I said, they look like Tauck ships, but they're actually owned by another company out of the Netherlands who operate everything. Tauck just, leases these things for, I think, 15 years at a time. But the point is they just have their, certain expenses. If the world stops, they're not having to, pay staff and lay up the ships, and they don't need to worry about all this. So again, that's why they were able to refund people within a week or two during COVID, which was unheard of at the time. So like I said, they're really smart how they handle their finances. They have a big war chest, we'll say war chest when it comes to, money in the bank. And it's because they know things can go wrong and they've just been through it all. So it really makes a difference. So like I said, so knowing we can trust them is a big thing. But the other reason why Tauck is so good, in my opinion, and why my clients go with them again and again, is that you can really see the whole world with them. Now, let's say you like to cruise with, I don't know, Regent or Oceania or one of the big ships, Princess, it doesn't matter. You can see most of the world, but there's some places that you just can't get to. Like it's hard to do an Africa safari with some of those companies. You might be able to do an add-on, but you're not going to do it properly. You can't go to Antarctica with a lot of those companies because you got to have a certain small ship. So the nice part with Tauck is because they do river cruises, land tours, small ship cruises, they really can show you pretty much the whole world. They have I think it's somewhere over 150 journeys all around the world in over 70 countries. So if you travel with them, you like them, you can literally see all 7 continents. So it's not like you need to switch from company to company and rediscover a new company again and again and get used to different guides and all this. It's very consistent. So that's why it's very attractive. Um, Another thing I really like about Tauck is that they're family owned. So when I say Tauck, again, Tauck, that's actually the last name of the founder. So Arthur Tauck, who started this company, 100 years ago, that's his name. So they were called Tauck Tours at the time, and he just started running tours around Canada and New England. I think back then it was like $100 or $138 or something like that. It was really inexpensive. So, but the point is that it's a family-owned company. So what I like about that is that it's a big company. Don't get me wrong, but yet because it's family-run um, or family-owned, it's just really easy to kind of get in contact people when you have to because they still have that small feel. So, myself, like I said, I'm on their advisory board. So, I do know the CEO and the chairman of the board and the president and the senior VP of sales. So if anything goes wrong with my clients, I'm going to know how to, who to go to get that fixed up. And I'm sure if you have a travel agent that, that works with Tauck a lot as well, they can do the same thing. But the point is, it's a real advantage because when you're working with some of these public multi-billion-dollar companies, it's almost impossible to get things fixed when they go wrong. And I hear frustrations all the time from my own clients, from my colleagues, and other people who've traveled in the past. But it's not like that at all with Tauck, which is really good. But again, if we bring it all back to what they're all about, they're pretty much the most destination-focused company that I've ever come across, which I think is really their bread and butter. So again, you might go on a cruise line, and the cruise itself could be the destination. I mean, there's times I've gone on cruises and I haven't got off the ship. I mean, literally, the ship is that much fun. There's that many restaurants and that many lounges and that much entertainment. You don't need to go anywhere. But that's not what Tauck is about at all. I mean, when they do a cruise, for example, they're usually going to be about 200 guests or less. Same with the river cruises. There's like 130 on board, maybe even 85 people, depending on which river you're on. So they're not about the ships at all. They're about the destination. So really what they're all about is, one of the logos that they use for years, and they still do, is how you see the world matters. And I couldn't agree more because you could, go with another company to, I don't know, let's just say Asia, and maybe you go around Japan, and in 12 nights, a cruise line might have 6 stops and 6 port days because not only do they want to give you a taste of Asia, but they also want you on the ship. They want you to go into the casino and spending money at the shops and, doing all that stuff. Whereas Tauck, like when I went to Japan with him and I did a land tour because I just thought it was the better way to do it. And I do have another video on that if you want to search for it, if you want to learn about it. But the point is that it was all about the destination. Like all we did was get immersed in Japan for like 2 weeks. I tried so many amazing foods and saw all the sights, and I wore some of the local clothing, and I was doing sushi making and flower making or origami lessons. I mean, I saw geisha shows, samurai shows, sumo wrestling shows. I got in the onsens, which is the the hot water springs, the pools. I mean, I literally did it all. I felt like I lived in Japan, but you're not going to get that on a cruise. So the point is that Tauck is so destination focused, and wherever I've been in the world with them, and I've been to India, I've been to Australia and New Zealand, I've been to Morocco, I've been to multiple places in Europe with them, Iceland, I've been to Antarctica with them, I've been to Africa doing safaris. Wherever you go, it's the same thing. They show you the destination amazingly. So again, it's not about a cruise ship or about like, staying in a hotel and just relaxing for days. Not that you don't have opportunities to do some of that, but the point is that it's about seeing the destination. So again, how you see the world matters. And because of that, Tauck pays attention to every single detail when you do these trips to make sure that you do see the world in pretty much the best way possible. Even when they do their tours, they make sure their hotels are in some of the best spots. Now, don't get me wrong, they're also amazing hotels, a lot of them. I've stayed at the Four Seasons in Kyoto and Marrakesh and the Serengeti in Africa with Tauck. I've stayed at a lot of Fairmonts. In India, we stayed at the Oberois. So some of these hotels are absolutely amazing. I mean, I've had views of the Taj Mahal from my room with Tauck. I've had views of the Sydney Opera House from my room. So I've had river views when I'm over in Europe on the river. But the point is that not only do they, yes, have some really nice hotels, but the point is they're going to be in great spots. I've been, I've seen other companies where they might say 30 minutes outside of a city, which is fine, it keeps the price down and that. But what happens when you got some free time? How do you just step out the door and walk around and enjoy the city? So that's just not really the way that you want to do it. And it's not the way my clients want to do it, which is why they really like how Tauck has great hotels. So again, how you see the world matters. It's not just about showing you a place, but it's about trying the local foods, maybe checking out the clothing, doing the lessons, seeing the local shows, meeting the people, going in the homes, different things like that. So like I said, how you see the world matters is so important, and that's what Tauck really, really, really specializes in. In my experience, they literally show me the world better than any other company ever has. And I've traveled with the best cruise lines in the world, from Regent to Silver Sea to Crystal and on and on. And these are great, great, great companies, but they just don't do the destination part as good. So like I said, it's if you want to see the world in a spectacular way, Tauck is going to be able to do that for you. Now, let's talk about some other highlights of why my clients love Tauck. Again, about 40% of my clients travel with Tauck, and why so many people do like traveling with them, and they go with them again and again and again. When I've been on Tauck trips, I've met people who've been on 20 plus Tauck trips. Just when I was in my meetings last week, I found out that over 1,300 people have been with Tauck on over um, uh, why was it 100 trips. That was a staggering number. I couldn't even believe it. So like I said, I mean, just some of the some of these numbers that people go again and again and again. And every time I do a Tauck trip and you meet people, it just amazes me how many times they went with them. But again, it's because they do it well and they show them the world. But here's another few reasons why. Number one is they're very, very, very all inclusive. So if you do a river cruise with Tauck, or if you do a small ship ocean cruise, they're pretty much all inclusive. I mean, everything on board the ship is included, from Wi-Fi to all your drinks, including alcohol, to airport transfers before and after. And Tauck does the transfers better than anyone. I actually made a separate video about it, so you can look for that on my channel. They include all the meals. And then the biggest thing is they include all the shore excursions. Now, there are some companies out there that do include, shore excursions. So, for example, on the rivers, whether it's Viking or Ama Waterways or Avalon or whoever, yes, they include excursions, but it's not the same quality as Tauck. And I will touch on that a little bit later in this video, or maybe on a different river cruise video. But the point is, like, so let's say you go with Viking, for example, they might have like one basic, and I mean basic tour that's included, and then they might have 6 other ones that you got to pay extra for. And then even Ama Waterways, who, I sell mostly Tauck when it comes to river cruises, but Ama's next. And like, let's say you go to Vienna and you want to see a classical concert, which is one of the highlights of Vienna. Again, you got to pay for that with Ama, with Tauck is included. So like I tell people, when you go with Tauck, and the excursions are such a big thing, if you should see something, they include it. They don't have optional. Actually, there's probably 2 optional tours that I've ever seen with Tauck out of their 150 trips. One is in Capri at the start of their Italy trip, because you actually got to fly in a day early to do it. So not everyone can do that, which is why they charge separately. And for whatever reason, the balloon ride, the hot air balloon ride in Australia and New Zealand, they have to charge separately for, because for some legality reasons they can't include it. But the point is that pretty much every excursion that you'll ever take with Tauck is included in your upfront price. So you never need to worry about, am I seeing what I should see? Do I have to pay more when I get there? It's just all in there. So it really, 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 really makes a difference. So like I said, Tauck is very, very all inclusive. Now, the only thing that they don't include is when you do their land tours, because you only have one guide, they call them Tauck directors. They don't include the tips up front, because a lot of people, because they're dealing with this one person the whole time, they always usually overtip them. So instead of giving them the $15 per day that they recommend, they overtip them. Even me, I've done that every time. I've been on 6 or 7 Tauck land tours, and you get to know this guide so well because it's one person. So as a Tauck client, we like to kind of tip that person individually, which is why they have that separately. But if you're on a Tauck cruise, whether a river or an ocean, there might be anywhere from 2 to 6 what we call Tauck directors. So you're not having to tip them all; they include it all. So again, it's only for the land tours. And then when you're on the land tours, they don't include all the alcohol. It's just the way it works. It's not the same as being on a cruise where they can control all and everything. So I usually find about 1/3 of the days will have some kind of alcohol involved, whether it's a welcome reception or farewell reception or some special, meal throughout the journey where they include wine, beer, whatever. But again, it's not all the alcohol included all the time, like on a river cruise or an ocean cruise. But again, Tauck is very inclusive. When you pay up front, you're paying for pretty much everything. Just a couple of like little examples, like when I did my Tauck Antarctica cruise, even the rental boots, you actually got to pay to rent your boots, but Tauck takes care of that for you. I'm going on a Silver Sea trip to the Arctic very soon, and when I say Silver Sea, this is like top rated company in the world. Them Region Explorer, we're talking the top companies. This is like a $30,000 per person trip, when you go up there, and they're charging like $100 a person to rent boots. I mean, it's almost like maddening. Like, how can you charge $30,000 for a trip and then charge someone $100 to rent boots? Tauck doesn't get into things like that. So again, even when you look at the most all-inclusive cruise lines in the world, again, Tauck is usually even more inclusive. Their transfers is a great reason, why they would be more included than anyone else, and I'll touch more on that in a few minutes here. But they even do little things like, I remember being in Europe with Tauck or other places where you got to pay for the bathroom break, or you got to pay like €1 or whatever to go to the bathroom. They'll go up and they'll say, oh, I got 20 people here. Here's €20 or here's €15 or whatever. I mean, they literally take care of everything for you. So it's really fabulous, and people like that. Little surprises along the way too. I remember being on a Tauck River cruise one time, and it was just colder than normal. Whatever reason, it was just colder than normal. Well, we were out for a bike ride, and it was a bit too cold. So they literally surprisingly bought, if I remember, I think it was gloves for the ladies and hats for the guys, right? Probably because, of course, some of us got thinning hair, and we wanted to keep our heads warm, and the ladies, to keep their hands warm on the bike. But the point was, it was such a great gesture. Other times, we might be done a tour earlier, and they're like, hey, here's a coffee shop. And we went in and they bought everyone a coffee, or a croissant or whatever. So they'll do like little things along the way that you will never see on any of these other companies. And people really, really like and appreciate that. And again, like I said, all excursions included. So it's not just like one choice, like whatever you should see is in there. And they do have choices as well, which is great. And they never sell options. So like if you've been with other companies, sometimes you'll go and they'll take you to a store and they're trying to get this shop and they're getting a kickback, or maybe they're trying to sell you extra tours when you get to the cruise or the tour. Tauck does none of that, which is super important, and their clients really like that. Now, speaking of tours, they literally have the best guides that I've ever come across. Now, they call them Tauck directors, which does sound a little bit elevated, which is fitting because they really are. And really why I say that is because I've never met a Tauck director who's been with the company for under 10 years. Some of them, a lot of them actually I've met have been around for 15 to 20 years, and I think the most was 28 years. So the point is, when they get with Tauck, they stick with them for a long time because Tauck treats them well, and they know that Tauck does a great job showing the clients around, and that clients are happier, so that makes the guides happier. I mean, it's a real thing, and they stick with them for years and years. But they have guides from, like, I think it's something like 41 countries, and they speak over like 51 languages. So the point is wherever you go, they're going to know that area really well. They're going to have been there multiple times. They do a great job. But then not only is it your Tauck guide, but then they have great local guides. And like I'll probably do this in another video, but let me just give you a couple of quick examples. Let's say again you go on a cruise. Now, I've been on 88 cruises, so I've seen this dozens of times. The number one complaint I get from my clients is shore excursions. And even when it's included, like with Region or Silver Sea, like people come back and it's like 50-50 whether they like it or not. People complain about it all the time. If you don't believe me, the next time you're on a cruise, go stand by the shore excursion desk at the end of excursions, and I promise you there will be people that are complaining. So I hear it all the time. And the reason is, the top reasons people will say, I had a guide and I couldn't understand their English. It just wasn't very good. Or they were on the bus and they were playing with their phone and they weren't giving us information about what we were seeing. Or there could be just 100 different issues. But what Tauck does, like let's say you do a cruise with them, a river cruise is a good example, because they have, say, 4 directors on the cruise and not just one, like AMA and Viking and Uniworld and Avalon have, they have 4. So they have a few extras. Yes, one stays on the ship like all the other companies, but they have a few extra that can go on tour with you. And same with like an ocean cruise. Like if Tauck charters your ship, they'll have, say, 6 directors. 1 will stay on the ship and the other 5 will go on tour. So here's the point. When they go on tour and the local companies know that the Tauck directors are coming on to the tours with them, well, they're going to make sure that they send people who know really good English. They're not going to be playing on their phone because they kind of know Tauck is watching them. Now, it's not in a negative way, a big brother way, but they just know that the Tauck people are going to be there and that they better bring their best people. You wouldn't believe how many times I've got to a place with Tauck and I hear, hey, this is the owner of the local company who's showing us around today. I don't get that with other companies. And again, it's because with Tauck, they know they're kind of there to also guide their clients. So they need to make sure they're giving their best efforts and they're giving their best guides and their best tours. So I never get complaints from my clients about the guides, about the local guides when it comes to the ports or the cities that you visit during the land tour. Again, when I go with Regent, Silversea, Crystal, Oceania, Princess, Celebrity, whoever, they do not send people off on shore excursions. Yes, you might get the odd staff member who's taking a day off and they send them, but they're not helping. They're not making sure their guides are doing their job. So there's no one there to kind of watch out. So it's just very, very different. And this is why, like I said, Tauck has great guides, but also great local guides that they meet up with when they get to the destinations. Now, another thing my clients love, love, love with Tauck is the small amount of people that they travel with. So let me just give you some numbers here. Let's talk about river cruises, because a lot of my Tauck clients for the first time end up on a river cruise. This is how a lot of my clients get to Tauck. They love them, and then they go with them again and again on maybe land tours or small ship cruises. But a lot of the people I introduce to Tauck is to river cruises. And it's because they are the top rated river cruise line in Europe. Now, I won't get into everything why here. I'll do another video on that another time. But the point is their numbers are so small. So when you do a Tauck river cruise, you know, some companies call their ships long ships. And we all know who that is. You know, I won't name names, but they rhyme with biking. But the point is that they'll say, we have long ships. Well, what they don't realize is that Tauck's ship is just as long, as is Alma's, as is Uniworld's, as is Avalon's, as is Viking's. They all have the same ships because they're going through the same locks underneath the same bridges. So they're all pretty much the exact same size. And you'll see that when they line up side by side. But Tauck, for example, will put 130 people on that ship. Alma, Uniworld, Avalon, 160. Viking, 190. So that may not sound like a big difference, but if you put 130 and 190 on the same person's ship, it gets way, and the same amount of people that can fit on board ship, it gets way more crowded on the 190 person ship. The rooms are way smaller. Like we're talking like some of them are 135 square feet, which is half the size of a regular hotel room. When you go to the lounge for the talks, for the lectures and stuff, there's literally not even enough seats for everyone. So like I said, it's just very different than you know, than going with Tauck, where there's just lots of room to spread out. The rooms are much bigger, and it's a whole you know, different feel. Also, when you go on the excursions, again, when you've got 190 people, Viking, for example, they'll have 4 buses. So I don't know what that is off the top of my head, but I think it comes to what, 48 people per bus or something. You know, almost 50. Tauck on average has 15 people on their shore excursions when you do a river cruise. So again, do you want to be on a tour with 50 people or with 15? I know almost all my clients and me, we want to be on the 15, because when you do that and you've got a Tauck guide there and you've got a local guide, you get so much attention. You can ask your questions, you can get your answers, you can learn much more about it. Also, it's much faster getting on and off the buses, or maybe there's a meal involved. It's faster getting in and out of a restaurant. So everything about smaller is usually better. You know, basically just know that when you're in a small group, it's usually a bigger experience, is what we like to say. So like I said, when you go on a river cruise, you're going to travel with less people with Tauck. Same with their ocean cruises. Tauck doesn't go with companies that have 4, 5, 6, 7,000 people. They won't even really do the 7, 8, 900, 1,000 people. Almost all their cruises are going to be like right around 200 people or less. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a few exceptions. In Alaska, they have one ship that has about 2,000, and it's just because it really is the best fit. But that's the only one that's anywhere in the thousands. They use a couple of Silver Sea ships in other areas, which I think might have 400. But most of their ships are going to be like Windstar and mostly Ponant, which are like 200 people or less. So when you do an ocean cruise with Tauck, you know you're going to be traveling with just a couple hundred, not a few thousand or more. So people love, love, love that. And then when you look at their land tours, again, if you go with another company, they're going to jam that bus as much as they can. If there's 50 people on the bus, or if there's 50 seats, they're going to put 50 people in it. Tauck, they have their classic groups, which are like usually 30 to 36 people on average. They have their small groups, which are usually 20 to 24 people. And now recently they've introduced their smaller groups, which are like 15 people on average. So the point is that, you know, they kind of start with a small group and they go even smaller if you don't mind paying a little bit more for that. Most of my clients actually do that because, again, smaller group, bigger experience, because you get more free time, because you're moving around a little bit easier, a little bit faster. You have more time with the guide. You learn more. Everything's great about the small group. So people love that when it comes to Tauck. Now, one of my biggest highlights with Tauck is, and this is something that I've never seen with any other company, is that they just get exclusive access and local connections that I've just never seen anywhere else. Now, again, they've been around 100 years, so I guess it makes sense because they've kind of built a few relationships. But I mean, oh my God, I have so many examples of this because, again, I've been with Tauck 11 times myself. So I remember being in, for example, Prague, at the Prague Castle, and we were in this beautiful Baroque library inside the red velvet rope looking out at people looking back in at us. So we were on the inside, they were all looking out, looking back in. I mean, it was just fabulous. Tauck gets that kind of access. And not in every single place they go, but I've never been on a trip with Tauck where they don't have something like that. Um, I've been in New Zealand. We were at Peter Jackson, who's done all the Lord of the Rings movies. He has a private museum there. We had a private dinner one night. It was absolutely fabulous for, like, I don't know, 20 of us. You go to the Vatican in Rome, to the Sistine Chapel, and they'll have like an after hours viewing. Is it, I believe, in the Louvre in Paris? I think they have an early viewing for to see Mona Lisa. When you go to Monet's home in Giverny, again, you get early access to see the water lilies and his pond and everything. Where else? Champs-Élysées, when you are in Paris with Tauck on some of their tours, you'll go to Fouquet's, which is an amazing restaurant in that area. You'll just do all these kinds of little things. I've been to private ranches with Tauck. I've seen private horse shows. I've been to private blessings in Japan, where they gave us this blessing that only usually little babies get, or people who are getting married. Again, they did it for the Tauck group. Again, I've had private sumo shows with Tauck. I think when you go to the Last Supper painting, Da Vinci's Last Supper painting in Milan, they have a private viewing there. I'm just trying to think. I mean, you'll see in Tauck's book. All you got to do is go through the brochure, go online, and it'll mention some of the private things they do. But I mean, it's amazing. Egypt, after hours visit to the Valleys of the Kings. I think they go to Ernest Hemingway's home in Cuba. So the point is that some of the things you do there are just absolutely fabulous. Safaris in Africa, like private game drives. I actually remember being in Africa. This is no joke. You'll see this on my website. There must have been, we were in, I cannot remember the name of it, but we were in this area where there was like well over 100 vehicles seeing safaris, because it's not regulated like South Africa. So it was in East Africa. Ngorongoro crater, I believe is what it's called. Anyway, point is that there's a lot of Jeeps there driving around. So it was lunchtime and everyone seems to eat at the same time. I literally counted 96 vehicles that were all in this one area. And our 4 Tauck vehicles drove by, and we drove about 5 minutes past. And out in the back in this private area, no word of a lie, this was in the middle of nowhere. They had these tables set up for us with white cloths. The chef was there with his hat on. They had this almost like a barbecue area set up. They were grilling for us. It was unbelievable. So these 96 vehicles were sitting around this lake, and they were eating out of brown paper bags, like just packed lunches. And we were literally having a private meal cooked for us with like probably 4 or 5 members who would come down from the hotel, which I can't even imagine the work it was to bring that, from an hour away, set it all up, pack it all up again, just to feed, there was probably 20 or 30 of us. It was unbelievable. So some of these experiences that you get with Tauck, you couldn't even pay for them with other companies. And again, when I talk about inclusions earlier with excursions, because this kind of almost ties into it, let me give you an example. One time I was in Budapest with Avalon. Now, whether it's Avalon or AMA or Viking or Uniworld, they all do about the same thing. So I'm in Budapest, and we go to the Fisherman's Bastion. Now we go up there, which is one of the best places in Budapest. You got to go there. You get to look over the city. So we go up to this area, and they say, look, there's the beautiful Matthias Church. And they say it's gorgeous inside. If you want to go inside, go on over there where you can buy a ticket to go inside. Then we walk around the corner, and they show us this viewing area. They say, here's the best place for views in Prague. If you go over there, you can pay, whatever, I don't know, however many euros, and you can go see the views. And then after that little tour, they said we had 3 hours on our own, and they'll see us later on. I mean, we literally, you fly thousands of miles to go see these places, and that was what was included. 4 months later, I ended up back in that same area with Tauck. We go back to the same area. There's the beautiful Matthias Church. It's absolutely gorgeous inside. Come in and we're going to show you around. Of course, Tauck had already paid for it, and they brought us in and showed us around. Then they say over there is the best viewing platform in all of Prague. Come on over, and we're going to show you up there. They had already prepaid it and everything else. Then after it was all said and done, they took us for a local Hungarian meal in this, nice little restaurant up in the area. We had a great meal, and I think we had about an hour on our own. So instead of basically seeing nothing and having hours on our own, we went into the church. We went to the viewing platform. We got all the history. We had a local meal, tried the local foods, and then we had a little bit of free time. What a difference. So again, when I talk about exclusive access and inclusive tours and stuff, it's just a night and day experience, which again is why, Tauck is so popular when it comes to repeat clients. I mean, people go with them again and again. And even some of the foods, like I remember being in Japan and eating at Nobu, who's one of the most famous Japanese chefs in the world. We got to try that. We had a 9-course Japanese meal at another night. We went to the teppanyaki place. We went to the tempura place. Um, the point is we tried it all. And look, if this is not your thing, don't worry. They always have American food around for those who want it. But the point is there's the opportunity absolutely to try the local foods, which is what a lot of people go for. They don't go to eat burgers and fries. They want to go to try Japanese food or try African food or whatever it is. So Tauck gives that opportunity, and not every company does. Again, they're saying, okay, go do your own thing, which is super disappointing when you've flown, thousands of miles to get there. With Tauck as well, I've done a lot of like private boats. And so in Australia and New Zealand, for example, we took private flights, like 6 private flights around those 2 countries, because they're so big and so much to see and do. It just saves so much time. So they have these flights for like 20 of us. And we saw about 50% more than the average people do who go to Australia and New Zealand. So it's just fabulous. And like I remember going to the Sydney Harbour to do a boat ride, and also Marble Sound and another one of the sounds. And we had our private boat. So again, this could fit 100 people, but they don't have the 20 or 30 Tauck people on there. So they do all kinds of stuff like this. It's just really, really different than the average company out there. Um, so I know this has been a long video, but again, a lot of people, they look at Tauck and they say like, boy, these aren't inexpensive trips, which they're not, and they want to make sure there's good value in it. So, this is why I'm trying to be thorough here, because maybe you're looking at Tauck and you're trying to decide if it is for you or not. But let me just mention a couple of last few things, and hopefully I'll wrap this up here for you. One thing that you're almost going to get on almost all Tauck trips is a free hotel night, pre-cruise or pre-land tour. And even if you already have a hotel included, it's like an extra night. And that may not sound like a big deal, but it usually really is, because you never want to fly in the day of to a Tauck trip, because almost always, let's say Tauck hits a trip that starts July 1st. Well, unlike most companies, you show up July 1st, there's nothing happening, then the next day you start. With Tauck, almost on most of their trips, at about 6 p.m., they usually have a welcome reception and dinner on day 1. So you can't fly in that day, because if your flight is late, you're going to miss it. And even if you're on time, you're going to be so tired, you're not going to enjoy it. So you always want to get in at least a day early when you do a Tauck trip. So if you play your cards right, you can get a free hotel night with Tauck pre-trip. Now, if you never traveled with Tauck before and you book with someone like me who's a certified Tauck agent, because I do a lot of business, I can always get you the free night. If you're a past guest like I am, and like a lot of my clients are, you've got to book like by July 31st each year for the following year. So let's say you're doing a 26 trip. As long as you book by July 31st, 25, you're going to get that free hotel night. So as long as you book on the right time, you will get that free night, which is a great perk. And you might be thinking, why am I going to book a year in advance? You have to book Tauck in advance. Like Tauck on average sells out a year and a half in advance when you look at their cruises, or their river cruises and everything else. So this is a company you've got to book early with, because again, they're so popular. Not popular that you hear them all around in the media, because again, it's a lot of word of mouth with them, and a lot of people like myself recommend them, but super popular that their clients who go with them go again and again and again, and they know to book early. So you've got to book early, but you will get that free hotel night by doing that. Again, I talked about airport transfers. Again, some companies will include airport transfers if you buy their airfare, and some will say they include it, but like there's all these restrictions with Tauck. It's ridiculously easy to get their free transfers, which are included in your price. Again, I made a whole other video about this, but again, things like that people love, because who wants to fly halfway around the world and land and have to worry about getting an Uber? Or do I have cash for the taxi, or what currency, or are they going to rip me off? Whatever. Here, it's all taken care of for you. So again, so easy, and like I said, inclusive with Tauck. Again, I get so many local experiences with Tauck, which is a real highlight. I've been in a lot of local homes doing anything from a tea ceremony to, I remember going to a chef's home one time and she cooked for us, and it was an amazing experience to see her kitchen, and I mean, it was so cool. We've met, some really nice musicians through Tauck, local ones who are kind of sharing their stories, sharing their talent. They've had scholars doing lectures for us, real super duper animal experts when you go to places like Africa, like who just know the elephants inside out or whatever it is they're talking about. They'll come have them, do a chat with us while we're having a cocktail reception or something like that. In Antarctica, they had a BBC filmmaker on board. Now, if you've ever seen a BBC film, oh my goodness, these are great videos, some of the best in the world. We had a filmmaker on with us. His stories were amazing. So again, you're going to learn so much with Tauck, and meet some interesting people along the way. Active things. Now, you don't have to be active if you don't want to, but when I've done river cruising and even other trips, there are biking opportunities, there are hiking opportunities. I've done jet boat rides with Tauck. I've done multiple helicopter rides with Tauck. I've, like I said, taken private planes in Australia and New Zealand. So if you like to be active and adventurous, they do have some of those components built in as well, which is just absolutely fabulous. Another thing I love about Tauck is they have a division of their company called Impact, IMPACT. And I won't get into it because I'll probably do another video, or you can find it on their site, but it's all about giving back. So when they visit the communities, I've visited schools that, them or some of their employees have helped build. They're always doing their best to be sustainable to the places they go. So they're not ruining the, environment by, having a heavy, environmental footprint and that kind of thing. So again, I love that they really pay attention to that. Just a few final things. Tauck has some really good travel protection plans. So with their land tours, if you buy their travel protection plan, which is usually like half the price of normal insurance, or even less a lot of times, it's like a cancel up until last minute, any reason, no questions asked. You don't even have to put in a claim, which is unheard of. But the reason I bring it up is because so many people these days, because of the political environment and whatever, the financial markets, they're like, I think I want to do this tour, but I'd also like to be able to back out if I had to. And you can do that with Tauck on their land tours, no problem asked, by just buying their travel protection. It's so simple. Again, something we can talk about another time, but just know that's there. It's not as simple with their cruises because they're dealing with third-party companies, but it still is better than any other travel protection I've seen sold through cruise lines. So again, something we can talk about one-on-one, but just know that they have those things there. Fair pricing. Everybody on Tauck pays the same price. So if you do a Tauck land tour, everyone on that trip paid the same price. If you do a cruise, everyone in your room type paid the same price, or whatever different room types they are, everyone's paying the same price. People love that. It's like buying an iPhone. Apple doesn't let you discount their prices. Everyone pays the same, depending on which model you buy. So people love that Tauck's pricing is fair. They know that there's going to be great value packed into it, and they know that they're not overpaying because everyone else is paying the same, which is why people book early. They're not waiting for that last minute deal. They're not waiting for Labor Day or Christmas deal or whatever. There's never a deal on Tauck. Not that there's not great value, but I mean, they're never going to drop the price. So the point is that everyone pays the same, and people absolutely love it because, again, these are top quality trips. So hopefully I've covered, why Tauck is a great company to travel with. I mean, there's probably so much more I could say. Feel free to message me if you have more questions. Leave a comment in my, in my video here, or go to my website and contact me. But just one last thing. Let me talk about maybe a few people who this may not be for, because Tauck is not going to be for everyone. I mean, it works for like a lot of my clients, but it's not going to work for everyone. So number one is, when I travel with Tauck, and again, I'm a Canadian. Now, 99% of my clients are in the US, so I work with US people, but the point is I'm a Canadian, and I'm like usually one of maybe 2 or 3 on a Tauck trip. So the point is usually over 90% of clients with Tauck are from the US. There might be a token person from Canada, the UK, or Australia, New Zealand, but maybe at the most 2, 3, 4 on a trip. So almost everyone's American. So if for some reason you don't want to travel with Americans, this is not going to be for you. Again, 99% of my clients are from America, and they're happy to travel with people that they can, relate to and get along with and stuff, and it works well. But again, if for whatever reason you want to travel with a very diverse group, Tauck is probably not going to be for you. Also, if you're a big-time cruiser like me, and again, I've been on almost 100 cruises, but let's say when you cruise, you love to have like the best restaurants on board, the best suites on board, and that kind of stuff. Tauck's probably not going to be good for you when it comes to their small ship cruises, because when you look at Penang, these are small 200-person ships. It's like a river cruise. There's like one restaurant, one lounge. Most of the rooms are 200 square feet. Don't get me wrong, they have about maybe 15 or 20 suites on board, but unless you book like, within the first month or 2 after they open, you're probably not going to get it because they always book first. So the point is, if you need to go on a ship with all the different restaurants and all the best suites, again, there's a couple of options that Tauck has out there where they use Silver Sea. That's probably it, actually, because again, everything else is going to be on a Windstar or a Penang, which is a basic room, a basic restaurant. But again, it's all about the destination. And don't get me wrong, good service on these, good food and everything else, but it's limited. So it's not going to be for you. If the cruise is more important to you than the destination, don't do a Tauck small ship cruise, do a regular cruise. But if the destination is more important to you than the cruise is, know that Tauck is going to show you the destination better than anyone else. And then I guess the last people that this is not going to be good for is that, maybe you just don't have the budget for it. I mean, I think the average, booking I make with Tauck is about 30 grand a couple. and some of them are way more than that. So a lot of people look at the price and they get totally, what's the word? They just get sticker shock. And now once people go on Tauck for the first time, I hear it all the time. I remember being in Australia and New Zealand, which was one of the most expensive trips I've ever paid for in my life, and probably was the same for everyone on it. But there was private jets involved and private boats and stuff. And I remember about halfway through, I kept hearing people say, "How is this all we paid?" So think about that. You look at a price, you're shocked with how expensive it is. Next thing you know, you're thinking halfway through the trip, how did I get away with this? I feel like I'm robbing them. And I hear it on every Tauck trip where people say, "Oh my God, yeah, we paid for it, but boy, the value was amazing." So again, if you're someone who looks at price over value, Tauck is probably not going to be for you. If you're all about the value, which again, most of my clients are, Tauck is perfect because they're going to pack the value into their pricing. So anyway, like I said, this has been a big video today, but it's just because I have so many people who I work with Tauck where they've never been on them before. They have a lot of questions. They want to know, are they worth the cost? You know, why do I keep hearing other people say Tauck is so good? So I've done my best here today to try to break down why they're so good. And if you are looking at them and you're on the fence, I'm very confident if you travel with them, you'll be very happy you did. Whether you book it through me or through another travel agent or Tauck Direct or whatnot, I just think you'll have a great time because they do show the world better than anyone. And like I said, they just make it simple with their great guides, their great, you know, inclusions and everything else. So, all right, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got some value out of it. Any questions, let me know. And down the road, maybe I'll try to do some videos on Tauck river cruises in particular, and Tauck land tours in particular, and Tauck small ship cruises. But again, I hope you got some value. Have a great day. Bye-bye.